Not the foreign interference again. Oh my gosh. The Liberals keep telling us, oh, we're all good. Whole commission, everything's okay. Canada is on lock. There's a couple situations in smaller races, but everything's okay. Then, bang! Chrystia Freeland's campaign gets smoked and gets attacked by the Chinese. That stinking Communist Party of China doing their thing, trying to dabble in the leadership race for the Liberal Party of Canada. I was told everything was okay. I was told that there was no significant threats. But as usual, Canadians are just like, yeah, but Liberal Party, can you shore up your little leadership race a bit? Can you make sure people who can qualify to vote are qualified? Those who shouldn't be qualified, just tighten into the rules up a bit. It'd be nice. It'd be nice. Just to make sure we have some confidence, since whoever wins this leadership race is going to be our prime minister. Just please, we're begging you. Can you get that figured out? Be nice. Then we're gaslit and told that, it's not that big of a deal. Foreign interference isn't, foreign interference is not a big deal. China don't care about us. I think China loves us. They love messing with us because we happen to be neighbors to their greatest enemy and greatest adversary at this present time in the geopolitical spectrum. So here we are. They want people who are going to be friendly to them. But you know what? Enough of that. Let's jump right into the story. Rapid Response Mechanism Canada detects information operation targeting a candidate for the leadership campaign of the Liberal Party of Canada. The Security Intelligence Threats to Elections Task Force today issued the following statement. Global Affairs Canada's Rapid Response Mechanism in its mandate as part of the Security Intelligence Threats to Elections Task Force to monitor the digital information ecosystem during the Liberal Party of Canada leadership campaign has identified an information operation targeting Chrystia Freeland. Ms. Freeland is Member of Parliament for University of Rosedale, yada, yada, yada. RRM Canada detected coordinated and malicious activity about Ms. Freeland. The launch of this information operation was traced to WeChat's most popular news account, an anonymous blog that's been previously linked by experts at the China Digital Times to the People's Republic of China. RRM Canada identified over 30 WeChat news accounts taking part in the campaign. The campaign received very high levels of engagement and views, with WeChat news articles disparaging Ms. Freeland netting over 140,000 interactions between January 29th and February 3rd. RRM Canada estimates that 2 to 3 million WeChat users saw the campaign globally. So, WeChat, those who know what China's all about, those who have friends who are from China know all about WeChat. WeChat is a very robust and large app that essentially does and houses everything on one product. News being a part of that. And the reason why this is significant is because it's a communist country. They can only allow so many products to operate in the digital realm within their country. We have a lot of Chinese Canadians here who have family in China whose only connection back home is either a phone number or WeChat. So this opens up a mechanism for some foreign interference to happen, where Chinese Canadians who are living here at home who happen to have WeChat are scrolling through these stories and being influenced, or even so much as having their family members call them saying, hey, this Freeland person doesn't seem like a great individual. They kind of seem like she hates China. Let's not vote for her. Let's vote for somebody else. That is kind of how these things operate and how these things go. With that being the intro and being the premise, if you're a regular person and a person who has a thought process and is interested in stories like this and how it impacts our country, naturally the question is, why Chrystia Freeland? Why her? She's never been overtly against China. Actually, it can be argued that she's always kind of turned a blind eye to China and their foreign interference here in this country. So why Chrystia Freeland? And for that answer, we shift our focus to journalist Andy Lee, who specializes in foreign interference, specifically issues with China and Canada. And this is what she had to say on the issue with Chrystia Freeland. She was translating some of the posts that were going up on WeChat about Chrystia Freeland, and Andy Lee said this: "It seems the trouble began when she appeared to side with Trump. It started before January 29th, though. They got the regime all fired up. They'll go after anyone who could be perceived as adopting a tough stance on China. This isn't perfect, but you get the picture, and what she means by not perfect is the translation." Canadian Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland's comments drew attention in the international political sphere when she publicly said that only when China returned to the state of the late Qing dynasty would the United States and Canada have a chance to usher in the so-called good times. The remarks revealed deep anxiety in Western countries about China's rise and demonstrated their toughness in global economic competition. The comment is not only a jab at China, but it also reflects the current US and Canada perceptions and reactions to global power structures and trade rules. At first glance, what Freeland said was truly shocking. She has been outspoken about her fear of China's growing power and her strong approval of America's global homogeny. She mentioned that the United States has always adhered to the principle of America first in the Trump era and pointed to the deficit in the large North American free trade area, believing that one of the sources of economic loss for the United States is trade with China. In fact, the core implications of Freeland's remarks are the common positions and interests that the United States and Canada hold in the face of China's rise. To start this off, we're going to just present evidence, things that are floating, and we can kind of make connections from there. You make your own conclusions. I'm just going to present what we are seeing and what we understand at this point, and how this all kind of connects together potentially. So here's some motive for the Chinese Communist government to go after Chrystia Freeland. As Andy Lee said here, they're a very sensitive bunch. Authoritarian regimes kind of end up being like that. They're a little touchy. Anyone who seems like they even so much as have a tough stance against China, well, they're going to go after you. That is the reasoning here for why they would have went after Freeland. So this is one reason, one explanation of why they're going after her. With that being the case, we have to take a look at why this is going on. Let's take a look at what Canada's role is in all this. Well, first, we are the neighbors to Donald Trump's America. Donald Trump has taken a very tough stance on China, and that China's not very stoked about Trump taking the stance he has. So what can China do? Well, China can infiltrate USA's closest ally and have some influence in that country, thus can have some influence in the United States to make sure they mitigate the damage that they are going to receive from Donald Trump, or at least perceived damage they'll receive from Donald Trump. That's what we have seen here with the number of Chinese police stations that have operated here, the intentional and coordinated efforts to intimidate Chinese Canadians here on Canadian soil. And with that, the Liberal Party's record of being very soft on China and actually being friendly with China to a degree is what kind of feeds into a lot of this. So let's take a look at right now. Why Chrystia Freeland? We look at the race. Karina Gold, not really even so much as on the radar. The next person in the Liberal Party, Ruby Dalla. A lot of people aren't really taking her seriously, so she can kind of be ushered off into the distance. China's not really concerned about her. Then we have Chrystia Freeland. Is the top two, Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland, running for leadership of this party. So naturally, if they are perceiving one of them to be tough on China, well, naturally, they're going to go ahead and support the other candidate who hasn't voiced displeasure for China, who hasn't echoed ideas that they want to be tough on China. So naturally, they're going to probably support that candidate by attacking the other candidate. It's kind of how that works. Again, all alleged, but this is kind of what we're seeing. These are the patterns we're witnessing. And so with these patterns, we have to go and shift our focus to someone like Mark Carney. You know, the man that they say has all the business acumen. The one who's been Mr. International with doing all the conversations, being cozy with a lot of different world leaders, having a lot of international business connections. The guy that Canadians apparently overwhelmingly want to negotiate with Trump. We need to shift our focus to him. What's his history looking like? What has he done? What has he operated in before he entered the political fray here in Canada? To start, we'll go off reading investigative journalist Sam Cooper, who's been covering a lot of the foreign interference here in Canada. And this is what he had to say in immediate response to the news that dropped about Chrystia Freeland's campaign being attacked. Commenting on the breaking story in an X post, Dennis Molinaro, a national security expert and former Canadian intelligence analyst, said, "If we have disinfo targeting Freeland, which favors Carney and traced to China, some hard questions need to be asked about his position on China, and we need to know why this is occurring. Carney would be PM if he wins, and I don't know his position on a major Western adversary in China. And tonight, I just got a whole lot more curious," Mueller added. In an X post at 8 p.m. Friday, Carney wrote, "I fully support Chrystia Freeland and her campaign in light of this disturbing report. I am fully committed to defending the integrity on this race and stand firm against any attempts to undermine our democracy. My deepest gratitude to the national security and intelligence officials who lead this important work to sustain trust in our democratic process." And that right there is the quote in question. For a man who claims to not be a politician, this is a very political answer. Doesn't outright call out China, even though we know it's coming from China. We outright know who's behind the attacks. He won't call out China. He'll just say, "I trust our processes here. I support protecting our democracy." That's all. That's it. We know who's behind it, but he refuses to name drop them. He refuses to fully defend against it. He refuses to denounce the workings of the Communist Party of China, which takes me to Molinaro's quote here. We need to know what his stance is now, and these need to be the questions we are asking him in his next press conference, and asking tough questions. What is your stance on China? We need to know now. And based on that answer, if he refuses to be directly critical of China, then your red flags should start going up and alarm bells going off. Because here are some facts that we need to know about Carney's business dealings. In October of last year, Carney attended and spoke on a panel at the annual conference of Financial Street Forum in 2024 next to Zhu Zhaocheng, vice chairman of Bao Forum for Asia, vice chairman of the 12th National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, and former governor of the People's Bank of China. Mark Carney spoke on a panel at this conference and spoke with Zhu Zhaocheng, who was, as they said, former governor of the Bank of China, big economist in China, has his hands in a lot of pots and a lot of investments. And Carney shared the stage with this man at this Chinese financial conference last year. And keep in mind, this was October of last year. Shortly after that meeting in November, Brookfield had secured a $276 million from the Bank of China to refinance real estate purchases, whom Carney was the chair of at the time. Not making any conclusions, but again, these are just the facts that you should just know about and some interesting things in time that happened. Are these linked? We don't know, but you should know the information. And from there, hopefully we can find out what the real story is at some point. Next, Carney did a campaign rally in Richmond, hosted by Liberal MP Parm Bains, who we see right here. In 2019, he did an interview with Rise Media, who has alleged ties to the Communist Party of China. And he had made some peculiar comments about creating a foreign interference registry. And I think 2019, I meant 2021. That's on me. And Sam Cooper, for the Bureau, wrote this about Parm Bains. 10 days before Canada's 2021 election, Justin Trudeau's candidate in Richmond, former BC government staffer Parm Bains, was interviewed for Rise Media, a media platform with alleged ties to Chinese Communist Party foreign influence and intelligence arms. The rookie Liberal was asked about the Foreign Interference Registry Bill, a bill tabled that year by his opponent, Conservative MP Kenny Chiu. If you are elected as MP, will you support this bill? A Chinese community activist asked Bains in a video segment for Rise Media. The simple answer is, I'm not supporting the bill, Bains answered. I don't believe that I can support any bill that is viewed as discriminatory against any community. A registry like this, to me, looks like a very discriminatory policy. The same day, September 10th, Bains got a front page election ad from Rise Weekly and a glowing endorsement article inside the magazine, titled, Should Chinese People Support Him? The piece urged citizens of Richmond, a riding of about 50% Chinese ethnic voters, to vote for Bains and Justin Trudeau on September 20th. It argued that Trudeau and Bains himself have promised to introduce legislation within 100 days of taking office to combat online violence, especially to severely punish online hate speech. And this was the ad published. So, Mark Carney does a campaign rally hosted by Parm Bains in Richmond, which was also covered by Cool Cop News, another news organization that has suspected ties to the Chinese Communist Party. The issue is with these accounts, they have so few subscribers and so few views. 31 views, 47 views. Look at their latest videos. Their most viewed video is at 239 views, and that was of their coverage of Mark Carney.
Mark Carney 宣布
And so you have to ask the question, why? What is going on? When you see a company like this that seems to have decent production value, but they have next to no subscribers, or they have fewer subscribers and next to no views, it makes you wonder, how are they funded? And this, I'll go back to a piece that Sam Cooper did almost 2 years ago now, talking about the foreign interference and how China has been operating within Canada. Sam Cooper appeared on a podcast, and he mentioned that he had his eyes on 4 different sets of national security records, say that there is systemic level of control from the Communist Party of China that allege that they have taken over all Chinese media outlets operating in Canada. That goes from print to online and broadcasters. And this is all focused based on the records he reviewed of election interference. Based on his review of these documents and sources, Chinese consulate officials were rounding up the top editors and journalists and telling them which candidates needed to be supported. Sam Cooper, who is a very credible journalist, has said that all Chinese media outlets operating in Canada are controlled and tied to the Chinese Communist Party back in China. So it makes you wonder, because of the issues and the weirdness that happened around Carney's announcement in Edmonton and how certain media outlets weren't allowed in and some were. Again, there was a lack of clarity of what happened there. We just know that some media members were not allowed in. But then he goes to Richmond, and this Cool Cop News, with little less than 2,000 subscribers and barely cracks 100 views, was allowed in to cover the event. Why? What's going on here? That's just a question you can ask. Why are some journalists allowed and others? These are reasonable questions to ask. We don't fully know, but these are questions that you need to ask Carney. We see the connections. We see what's going on. This is where your job as a journalist, when he's at these press conferences, you have to ask, what is your stance on China? This has been happening across our country where China's been having a serious influence on Chinese media outlets here. So what's your stance on handling them contributing to foreign interference here in this country? We need to get direct answers from him on this. And if he refuses to give a direct answer and be tough on China, as I said, red flags should go up. And I'll finish off with this. Coming from Margaret McQuaig Johnston, who is a senior fellow at University of Ottawa and been very vocal against China, and said this, and honestly, I have to agree. It's not an undercover attempt to affect who will be our next PM. Anyone on WeChat can see it. The question is, what will the panel of 5 deputy ministers do about it? Ignore it because it's not in the mainstream media like last time? Beijing knows what it's doing, and I have to agree. And this goes back to the Hogue Commission and the results of the report. They're saying, there's not really a whole lot to look at here on a federal level in terms of our general elections. And that's the one thing I feel like people focus a little too much on. Oh, our general elections haven't really been impacted. However, the report did mention that various races have been impacted and investigations need to be further done on those. I feel like that's something that people are forgetting about. And this is a race. This is a smaller race that can be easily impacted. And we need to be asking questions and figuring out getting down to the bottom of what's going on. And it comes down to this. We've looked at the pieces that we know at this point, and we'll be eagerly waiting for more details to come out. We know that CCP views Freeland as being tough on China to a degree. We know that Mark Carney has had connections to the former governor of the Bank of China, and he's done deals as a chair on behalf of Brookfield in China to the tune of $276 million. We then know that he didn't directly call out China in his X post. And then we also know that he's working with Parm Baines, who has been investigated and made concerning comments in regards to cracking down on foreign interference, working with different media outlets, allegedly has ties to China. That's where it leaves us. That's where we're at. And it's incumbent on the media to do their job and ask tough questions. If we start seeing Carney be a little more egregious and only allowing the mainstream media to get into his conferences, then you should start asking questions. We have seen it in passing to a degree. There's no real direct link that we can make. But if it continues happening and the mainstream media doesn't cover it and ask him tough questions about his stance on China, then that should be of a concern, and we will sound the alarm bells on that like crazy. We've been seeing the shift of Canada move, at least through the polls, moving towards a Carney-led Liberal Party. Yet this guy very much could be a candidate backed by China. We don't know. We'll see. And we'll wait for the details to come out. Have yourself a great Saturday. I'm out.